I think it goes without saying that last year was a pretty disappointing year for the Atlanta Hawks. Before the season started, they had a lot of people believing that they could fight for a playoff spot in the East. But due to them being young and having some key contributors miss games, the Hawks ended up finishing towards the bottom of the East. This offseason was a surprisingly good one for the Hawks, though. Going into the offseason, we knew that they were going to have a good draft pick. They ended up getting the number 6 pick, but I was one of the people that wasn't even considering the Hawks as big players in free agency at all. I mean, in retrospect, they did have a lot of cap space, and they had a nice young core as well going into free agency, but I just wasn't expecting them to sign the amount of good players that they did and really just get all the players that they were really targeting. Like I said, they started the offseason by using their draft pick on Onyeka Okongwu. Then in free agency, they signed Danilo Gallinari, Rondo, Chris Dunn, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and they traded for Tony Snell too, which I thought was a nice little pickup. This team, it reminds me a lot of the Timberwolves in the sense that they have tons of shooting and plenty of different lineups that they could run. And I think that those two things are ultimately going to lead to them being one of the better offenses in the entire league. Going into next season, I expect their starting lineup to be Trae Young at the 1, Bogdanovic at the 2. I personally believe they're going to start DeAndre Hunter at the 3, and then have John Collins at the 4 and Clint Capella at the 5. Then off the bench, they got Rondo, Kevin Huerter and Chris Dunn at the 2, Cam Reddish and Tony Snell at the 3, and Gallinari and Okongwu at the 4 and the 5. I know that there have been some people saying that Gallo should start at the 3, but the truth is that he's just too slow to play consistent minutes at the 3, and when your franchise guy is an undersized guard like Trae Young, you want to surround him with the best possible defenders that you can. That's why I think the Hawks are going to end up starting DeAndre Hunter this season. People forget that Hunter was the 4th overall pick in just last year's draft, and although it went kind of under the radar, Hunter did show a lot of potential in his rookie season. He wasn't nearly as good on defense as a lot of people were expecting him to be, but I feel like that can be attributed to the fact that he was their number 2 scoring option on a lot of nights, and now that Collins is going to be completely back, he missed like 25 games last year because of suspension, and Bogdanovic and Gallo will be giving the team some more offensive weapons. Hunter's going to be able to save more energy for the defensive end of the floor, which will ultimately benefit the team. On offense, though, Hunter shot 35.5% from 3 on just under 5 attempts per game, which for a rookie is pretty good. And he also showed some potential to score in the mid-range as well, so he's not just a guy that's like a spot-up shooter who can't really do anything when he has the ball in his hands. He can make some plays off the dribble and score in a number of different ways. He's going to be able to complement Trae really well, and like I said, you want guys that can play well with your franchise player. Then Collins and Capella should also be nice fits alongside Trae too. Collins actually shot 40% from 3 last year on almost 4 attempts per game, and he's also a really athletic big who's great at rolling to the rim. We've already seen that he and Trae have great chemistry in the pick and roll, and their chemistry should get even better this season. There's people that worry about how Collins and Capella are going to be able to play off one another. I mean, in today's NBA, you'd definitely prefer if your center had the ability to shoot from the perimeter, but unfortunately Capella doesn't have that ability. I still think that this fit could work though. I know basketball was a lot different at the start of this decade, but we saw the Clippers have success with a great pick and roll point guard in Chris Paul, an athletic big that liked to roll to the rim in Blake Griffin, and a big in DeAndre Jordan who hung out around the basket most of the time. And that sounds pretty similar to those 3 guys on the Hawks. I mean, I know Blake Griffin was a better passer at the time than John Collins is now, so he could kind of make some reads when he was playing in the pick and roll, maybe throw some lobs to DeAndre Jordan. But Collins is also a better shooter than Blake was at that time. I think worst case scenario, you can always try to stagger their minutes, maybe run lineups with Collins at the 5 so that the floor is really spaced and he has room to like roll to the rim without like a big clogging the lane or anything. And then you could have Capella playing alongside Gallo a lot, who doesn't roll to the rim as much as Collins, and he's kind of more of a perimeter player. Then they also got Bogdanovic and Rondo, like I said, and I think those guys were probably the 2 most underrated pickups that they got this year, just because they're going to be able to take a lot of pressure off of Trae. Last year, the Hawks, their main problem was that they were just way too over-reliant on Trae being able to create offense for himself and his teammates. With Bogdanovic and Rondo, you have two guys that can initiate the offense and allow for Trae to take some plays off. Offensively, they'll also make Trae a lot more threatening and efficient too, because he's going to get a lot more assisted buckets. Whether he's running off of screens or just spotting up, Trae's going to get a lot more open looks because of them. And then come the fourth quarter, Trae's going to have a lot more energy. In the final minutes, we've seen that teams often resort to iso ball, so now that Trae won't have to do as much throughout the first three quarters, he'll be better in the fourth quarter because of it, so that will help them win some close games that they might have not otherwise won if they didn't sign these guys. And it's also worth mentioning that Bogdanovic shot 37% from three last year on over 7 attempts per game, so he's just another shooter that's going to be able to space the floor for this team. Then their bench unit, led by Gallinari, it should be one of the better benches in the whole league. Gallo's been a really underrated scorer these past 2 seasons, and I think he's really going to go off against other teams' second units. He's going to be really tough to guard. And then you got Rondo running the offense. You got Kevin Huerter spacing the floor, and he can make plays too when he has the ball. Hopefully Cam Reddish can continue being a nice two-way player as well. Cam was really inefficient at the start of his rookie season, and he was kind of looking like a bust. But towards the end of the season, he was showing some nice potential as a defender and a 3-level scorer on offense too, so hopefully he can keep it up. And then at the 5 spot, you've got the rookie Onyeka Okongwu, who I really like. He moves really well for a 5, and he's going to be able to make an impact on the defensive end right away. Okongwu, he'll be a good rim protector, but where he'll really shine is in defending the pick and roll. Okongwu, he's really long and agile, and he's a smart defender that doesn't jump on like those subtle fakes that smaller guards try to use on bigs. Having good defensive bigs alongside Trae, it's a necessity, since he does struggle a lot getting through screens or staying in front of his man in general. Okongwu is an elite rim runner, and I can see Trae, Rondo, or Bogdanovic finding him for a lot of easy buckets that way. He's really good in the pick and roll, and I'd like to see the Hawks get him some touches in the post too, so he can improve his scoring there and decision making as well. Okongwu is also a great offensive rebounder at USC, and if that skill can translate to the NBA, that's going to be really great for the Hawks. Atlanta won't be a great defensive team next year, so out-rebounding their opponents and getting more possessions than them will really help them out in the long run. If Okongwu can develop somewhat of a consistent jump shot, like any semblance of a jump shot from the perimeter, I think he could potentially become an all-star one day. As much as I do like the moves that this team made this offseason, I have the Hawks finishing 8th in the East at 34-38. If everything goes right for them, I could see them finishing in 7th, maybe with a record slightly above 500, but I just think that this team's defense will ultimately be their downfall in a lot of games this year. As talented as this team is, they did also bring in quite a few new pieces. Even though they traded for Capella last season, he didn't play a single game for them, so he's another new guy that's going to have to be incorporated into this rotation. I just think that there will be a lot of growing pains with this team as they try to gel and learn how to win in an Eastern Conference that's getting better and better. Going forward, this team does have a lot of options. There's been a lot of speculation that they might trade John Collins or Clint Capella in favor of Gallo or Okongwu. I'm okay with moving Capella in favor of Okongwu if he's really good right away and shows a lot of potential, but I'm not a big fan of moving on from Collins unless you can get a lot back for him. I think he's got a lot of upside, and like I said earlier, he plays really well off of Trae. I know that Gallo might be cheaper after next season because, John Collins has been allegedly asking for a max contract and everything, but let's not forget that Gallo doesn't exactly have the best injury history. I mean, that would look pretty bad if you traded away Collins and then Gallo is in and out of the lineup with injuries as your new starting 4. Maybe the Hawks are just worried about losing cap flexibility or going deep into the luxury tax by re-signing Collins, but the thing is, guys like him don't just grow on trees. He's not on Trae's level in terms of being an all-star level player yet, but he's still a really good young player, and I'd like to see the Hawks try and hold on to him. He should be a restricted free agent, and I think that the market is going to ultimately determine his value. John Collins, like I said, he's nice, but he's not a guy that should be getting paid like $40 million a year. I think the Hawks could realistically bring him back on like a contract of like 4 to 5 years where he's getting paid about 25 to 30 million dollars a season, 25 to 30 million dollars on average per season. So if they can do that, that would be really nice. This team, they've got a really nice young core, and they should be one of the better teams in the East in a few seasons.